The story begins on a crisp, sunlit morning in a suburban neighborhood. The 22-year-old man, a kind-hearted, observant young adult, walks past the neatly kept gardens, noticing the soft rustle of leaves and the distant laughter of children playing. His life is predictable, simple, almost quiet, but that morning something shifts. At the edge of the street, on her porch, sits the 40-year-old widow, an American Caucasian woman with lightly tanned skin, long black hair cascading over her shoulders, and a graceful, curvy figure. Her presence commands attention without demanding it. She radiates calm confidence, a warmth softened by subtle smile lines and a hint of melancholy. Dressed in a flowing beige cardigan over a floral dress, she sips her coffee, eyes scanning the neighborhood, until they meet his. The first glance is fleeting, yet it lingers longer than expected. His heart skips, an unfamiliar heat rising. She tilts her head slightly, a quiet curiosity in her dark brown eyes, and offers a soft, knowing smile. There's an unspoken understanding that passes between them, a recognition of something delicate, uncharted, and entirely new. When she calls out to him by name, surprising him, the air shifts. Her voice is low, warm, carrying an almost magnetic sincerity. He approaches hesitantly, aware of the unspoken age difference, of the delicate social boundary that feels both tangible and inviting. Yet her manner is kind, confident, and intriguingly vulnerable. As they speak, their conversation is light at first, common courtesies, shared observations, but layered with subtle intimacy. Every gesture matters. The way she brushes a stray strand of hair behind her ear, the slight lean forward when listening, the gentle laugh that touches her eyes. Each movement sparks a quiet awareness in him. Each glance etches the beginnings of a memory he can't forget. By the end of their first interaction, there's a tangible tension in the air, not heavy or rushed, but simmering with possibility. He notices the softness in her gaze, the gentle vulnerability hidden behind her poised exterior, and realizes she's subtly inviting him into her world, carefully, tenderly. And though the societal boundary and age gap linger in his mind, the connection feels natural, electric, and quietly forbidden. Key emotional goal: establish curiosity, intrigue, and the subtle pull of romantic tension. Focus on sensory-rich details, warmth of sunlight, rustling leaves, gentle gestures, the way hearts subtly quicken in shared presence. This is the foundation of their slow-burn connection. The moment the ordinary becomes charged with quiet possibility, setting the stage for deeper emotional intimacy. The days that followed carried a subtle tension, as if the world itself held its breath whenever he passed by her house. The 22-year-old young man found himself walking the same quiet streets at similar times, hoping to catch another glimpse of her, though he tried not to admit it aloud, even to himself. Life felt a little more alive, every ordinary sound sharper, every breeze carrying a strange, anticipatory thrill. It was on a late morning, bathed in warm sunlight, that he finally found himself invited to sit on her porch. The 40-year-old American Caucasian widow, her lightly tanned skin glowing softly in the light, had moved a chair closer to the railing. Her long black hair fell naturally over her shoulders, catching golden highlights from the sun. She wore a comfortable yet elegant outfit, a cream-colored blouse with rolled-up sleeves and relaxed linen pants, the kind of clothes that hinted at both confidence and ease. Her dark brown eyes, calm but probing, watched him approach with a subtle, encouraging smile. Their first real conversation began slowly, like two musicians tuning their instruments before playing. She asked about his day, his work, his hobbies, but her questions carried a gentle warmth that made him pause, not out of discomfort, but because he felt genuinely seen. His own words came haltingly at first, the nervousness of youth balanced by an honest sincerity that she seemed to appreciate. There was a patience in her presence, an unspoken understanding that he was allowed to take his time, to stumble, to reveal himself gradually. He noticed the small, human details, The faint laugh lines near her eyes that deepened when she smiled, the slight curve of her fingers as she held her coffee cup, the quiet shift of her posture toward him when he spoke. Her gestures were unassuming, yet they radiated a warmth that made his chest tighten with an unfamiliar sense of belonging. And it was the way her voice softened when she laughed, a soft, melodic sound that seemed to linger in the air long after the words had ended. As the conversation progressed, their topics deepened without being forced. She shared subtle glimpses of her past, carefully selected memories that revealed both resilience and vulnerability. He listened, captivated not only by her stories, but by the quiet grace with which she shared them. Every glance, every brief touch of hands on the armrest, carried an electric yet entirely innocent intimacy. There was a rhythm forming between them, a give and take of attention and presence that felt entirely natural, despite the age difference. By the time the conversation drew to a close, the young man felt an unexpected weight in his chest. It was a mixture of admiration, intrigue, and the first hints of a longing he did not fully understand. The widow's eyes met his one last time before he left, a knowing softness there, a quiet invitation to continue this unspoken dance of words and glances. In that moment, the ordinary world seemed both distant and insignificant, replaced by a private space carved out between two souls beginning to notice each other. Key emotional goal: build emotional intimacy, trust, and the subtle tension of first real connection. Highlight sensory details: the warmth of sunlight, the texture of clothing, the softness of gestures, the weight of gaze, to reinforce a slow burn, YouTube-safe romance. This scene deepens the bond while maintaining the understated, respectful dynamics of age gap attraction, setting the stage for the story's growing tension and heartfelt moments to come. A few days after their first real conversation, the 22-year-old young man found himself lingering near her home again, though he told himself it was purely coincidence. The morning sunlight spilled across the quiet suburban street, illuminating the neatly trimmed hedges and flower beds that framed the widow's porch. She was there, as if waiting, her presence calm yet magnetic. The 40-year-old American Caucasian widow had long black hair that shimmered under the sun, lightly tanned skin glowing softly, and dark brown eyes that seemed to search his every expression with quiet curiosity. She wore a pale blue sundress that complemented her graceful figure, paired with simple sandals. Her posture was relaxed but purposeful, radiating a confident elegance softened by a subtle vulnerability. This time, their encounter carried a different energy, a quiet intimacy that went beyond words. She invited him to sit beside her on the porch swing, and as he settled next to her, he became acutely aware of the small space between them. The air seemed to hum with unspoken possibilities. She brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear, her fingers briefly grazing the space near his arm. The contact was fleeting, yet it sent a warmth rippling through him, a sensation he hadn't expected. Their conversation was lighter now, more comfortable, yet layered with subtle depth. They spoke of favorite books, music, and small joys of everyday life. Her voice, low and melodic, drew him in, and he realized he hung on every word, not just for the content, but for the warmth it carried. He noticed the soft smile lines around her eyes, the delicate curve of her lips when she laughed, the gentle rise and fall of her shoulders. Each small gesture conveyed a presence both nurturing and intriguing. At one point, she handed him a cup of lemonade, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. It was a tiny touch, yet it carried the quiet thrill of a boundary softly acknowledged, a moment of closeness that lingered in his mind long after. He found himself studying the way sunlight caught in her hair, the way her eyes reflected a mixture of amusement and contemplation, and realized he was beginning to see her not just as a neighbor, but as someone entirely unique, someone who stirred feelings he had never felt before. They shared a comfortable silence, swinging gently on the porch swing together, the breeze brushing past them, carrying the faint scent of her perfume mixed with freshly cut grass. In that quiet, The young man felt a profound sense of connection, as if they were sharing a private world hidden from the ordinary bustle of life. The widow's gaze lingered on him, warm yet tentative, an unspoken acknowledgment of the age difference and the delicate boundaries it implied. By the end of the morning, he walked away with a fluttering in his chest and a mind buzzing with thoughts of her. The warmth of her smile, the subtle intimacy of shared silences, and the quiet pull of something that felt entirely new and impossible to ignore. The tension between them was growing, but it was tender, respectful, and undeniably magnetic. Key emotional goal: deepen emotional intimacy through small, meaningful interactions. Focus on sensory-rich details, touch, glances, posture, and atmosphere to create a YouTube-safe slow-burn connection. Emphasize curiosity, budding trust, and the quiet thrill of proximity, setting up a subtle emotional tension that will gradually escalate in the story's next parts. It was late afternoon, and the golden sunlight poured through the trees, casting soft patterns across the sidewalk and the widow's porch. The 22-year-old young man found himself walking past once more, his steps slower than usual, almost reluctant to leave the street without seeing her. She was there, leaning against the railing, long black hair catching the warm light, lightly tanned skin glowing, and dark brown eyes scanning the horizon until they settled on him. Today, there was a subtle change in her expression, a softness, a hint of something deeper, almost fragile. She invited him in, not with words, but with a gentle gesture toward the small garden patio beside her house. The 40-year-old American Caucasian widow, graceful and elegant, dressed in a cream knit sweater and olive pants, offered him a seat. The way she moved carried an ease, but there was a quiet tension in her shoulders, a vulnerability that was unusual for someone so composed. Her presence radiated a warmth that enveloped him, drawing him into a space that felt private, intimate, and safe. As they sat together, conversation began lightly, but it soon turned toward more personal territory. She spoke softly, her voice carrying a subtle quiver that betrayed a trace of unspoken emotions. He listened, captivated, realizing that beneath her poised exterior lay a wealth of experiences, some joyful, others tinged with sorrow. She shared moments from her past with gentle honesty, not spilling every detail, but revealing enough to invite trust. He noticed the faint laugh lines at the corners of her eyes and the slight lift of her shoulders when she smiled, each detail reinforcing her humanity and the quiet strength she carried. At one point, she reached out to adjust a leaf brushing against his shoulder, her fingers brushing the sleeve of his shirt for a fleeting second. The touch was innocent, yet it sent a ripple through him, a subtle acknowledgement of closeness, a spark of intimacy without words. He realized how aware he had become of every nuance of her movements, the tilt of her head, the way her eyes softened when she looked at him, the warmth in her smile that seemed to linger longer than necessary. They shared a quiet silence, sitting close but not touching, allowing the world outside to fade. The gentle rustle of leaves, the distant hum of a passing car, the warmth of the sun on their skin, all became part of an unspoken connection. The young man sensed that this moment was delicate, a rare glimpse into the widow's true self, and he felt both privileged and nervous. His chest tightened with a combination of admiration and longing, a recognition that their bond was deepening in ways neither of them fully understood yet. By the time he left, the tension between them had grown, not in urgency, but in significance. He felt the quiet pull of something meaningful, a sense that their interactions were shaping a connection far beyond casual neighborly acquaintance. Her glance lingered as he walked away, soft and knowing, hinting at emotions she was beginning to trust him with, a mixture of warmth, curiosity, and a tentative desire that mirrored his own. The 22-year-old young man had begun to anticipate his visits to her home with a quiet eagerness he could hardly explain. That morning, the sunlight was bright and warm, streaming across the tidy suburban street and glinting off the widow's porch railings. The 40-year-old American Caucasian widow stood at the garden gate, her long black hair catching the light, lightly tanned skin glowing softly, and dark brown eyes meeting his with a warmth that made his chest tighten. She wore a flowing mustard dress, paired with simple leather sandals, a subtle elegance that highlighted her graceful figure without demanding attention. Today, she suggested they take a walk together down a nearby path that meandered through the neighborhood's small park. The young man followed, aware of the delicate proximity, their steps in sync, the silence between them comfortable yet charged with anticipation. Every small movement, every glance seemed to carry weight. The soft rustle of leaves, the distant laughter of children, and the warmth of the sun created a sense of intimacy, as though the world around them had faded into a private bubble. As they walked, the widow spoke of her favorite spots in the park, recounting memories of quiet mornings she had spent there, reading and sipping coffee. Her voice was calm, melodic, and laced with a quiet nostalgia. The young man listened intently, drawn not only to the stories themselves, but to the way she shared them. Her eyes occasionally glinting with amusement, the faint smile lines around her eyes deepening when she laughed softly. Every detail, the tilt of her head, the subtle gestures of her hands, the sway of her dress in the breeze, held his attention, a delicate dance of observation and admiration. At one point, she reached out to point at a flowering tree, and their hands brushed, fingers touching for just a heartbeat longer than necessary. The contact was innocent yet electric, sending a warmth through him that lingered long after. He noticed the gentle rise and fall of her chest as she laughed softly at a passing squirrel, the warmth of her shoulder close to his, and the quiet steadiness of her presence. It was a shared moment, small and simple, yet loaded with the kind of tension that only slow-building connections can hold. As they continued walking, their conversation deepened naturally. She asked him about his dreams, his worries, and the little things that shaped his daily life. He responded with honesty, feeling a trust growing between them that was rare and fragile. She listened with genuine attention, nodding softly, her dark brown eyes warm and encouraging, offering comfort and subtle validation. Every glance, every laugh, every fleeting touch built a bridge between them, a quiet intimacy that neither of them had expected, but both seemed eager to explore. By the time they returned to her porch, the young man felt a lingering flutter of anticipation and connection. Their shared moment had created an unspoken understanding, a recognition that this bond was growing, tender yet undeniable, and that their paths had subtly shifted to include one another in ways that were meaningful and deeply personal. Key emotional goal: elevate romantic tension through shared experiences and small physical interactions. Highlight sensory-rich details, touch, proximity, gestures, and light to reinforce emotional intimacy. Show that meaningful connection grows through subtle moments of presence, attention, and trust, setting the stage for a deeper emotional climax in the story's next part. The late afternoon sunlight bathed the widow's porch in a warm, golden glow, illuminating every detail of her quiet, welcoming home. The 22-year-old young man walked up the path with a heightened awareness of each step, heart beating a little faster than usual. The 40-year-old American Caucasian widow stood near the railing, long black hair flowing over her shoulders, lightly tanned skin glowing softly, dark brown eyes meeting his with an intensity that made him feel simultaneously exposed and safe. Today, she wore a soft lavender blouse tucked into high-waisted jeans, paired with delicate flats, her elegance understated yet commanding. This was not a casual visit. There was a deliberate intent in the way she guided him inside, gesturing toward the small sunroom bathed in warm light. The space was quiet, filled with the soft hum of the day outside, the scent of fresh flowers lingering in the air. They sat together on the comfortable sofa, a careful distance apart, yet close enough that he could sense her presence fully, the warmth radiating from her, the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, the subtle scent of her perfume blending with the sunlight. Their conversation began lightly, but it soon deepened. She asked him about his fears, his dreams, and the quiet moments that mattered most to him. He spoke with honesty, feeling a rare trust, a permission to reveal parts of himself usually kept private. In turn, she shared fragments of her own experiences, loss, resilience, the quiet loneliness that had become a familiar companion. Her voice carried a soft vulnerability beneath its confident surface, and he realized that her elegance was paired with a depth of feeling that few were allowed to witness. As they spoke, small gestures built a bridge between them. She reached across the space, her fingers brushing his lightly as she handed him a cup of tea. The contact was fleeting, yet it sent warmth through him, sparking a quiet awareness of the growing intimacy. Her eyes softened as she listened to his words, dark brown pools reflecting understanding, curiosity, and a hint of longing. When she laughed, even lightly, it was infused with a sweetness that made his chest tighten. In a quiet moment, she leaned slightly closer, her voice dropping to a soft murmur. "You make me feel young again, but also more alive in ways I didn't expect." The words hung between them, laden with unspoken meaning. He felt the weight of her honesty, the subtle confession of emotions that mirrored his own. It was a revelation of vulnerability and desire. Innocent, respectful, yet deeply stirring. By the time he left, the young man's mind and heart were both alight with emotion. Their connection had deepened in ways he couldn't fully articulate, a blend of admiration, longing, and trust. The age gap, which had once seemed like a boundary, now felt less significant than the undeniable emotional intimacy growing between them. They had crossed a threshold, stepping into a space where vulnerability was shared, tension was felt, and the possibility of something meaningful hung in the air, unspoken but undeniable. The sun had begun to dip toward the horizon, casting a soft, warm glow over the suburban street. The 22-year-old young man found himself walking toward the widow's home with a sense of anticipation that was calm, yet deeply rooted in affection. The 40-year-old American Caucasian widow waited on her porch, long black hair catching the fading light, lightly tanned skin glowing softly, and dark brown eyes meeting his with a gentle warmth. Today, she wore a soft cream blouse tucked into tailored pants, the subtle elegance of her attire reflecting the poised confidence she carried effortlessly. As he approached, she gestured toward the garden, where they had spent so many quiet moments together in recent days. The air was fragrant with blooming flowers, sunlight filtering through the trees in golden beams. Their connection, which had grown through shared silences, glances, and conversations, now felt fully realized, comfortable, intimate, and mutual. There was no need for hesitation. Each step he took toward her was matched by her welcoming smile and the quiet assurance in her posture. They walked together along the garden path, their shoulders occasionally brushing, a simple gesture that carried years of unspoken understanding and slowly blossoming affection. The young man noticed the subtle details, the gentle curve of her lips as she smiled, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners when she laughed, and the quiet steadiness in her presence that made him feel safe and seen. He felt the warmth of her hand near his, and when she offered it, he accepted without hesitation, the contact grounding both of them in the moment. Their conversation flowed naturally, touching on dreams, memories, and hopes for the future. Each word was carefully chosen, filled with honesty and an emotional clarity that allowed them to connect beyond surface-level exchanges. She shared thoughts she had never voiced to anyone else, and he listened with rapt attention, recognizing the trust she placed in him. Likewise, he spoke freely, revealing a depth of feeling that mirrored hers. The age difference, once a subtle concern, now seemed irrelevant compared to the authenticity of their bond. At one point, they paused near a small fountain in the garden. She turned to face him, dark brown eyes shining, and gently brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. The young man felt a quiet rush of emotion, a blend of affection, admiration, and gratitude. In that small, tender gesture, all the moments of laughter, shared secrets, and lingering glances crystallized into a profound understanding. They had found in each other a companionship that was both comforting and exhilarating. By the time evening fully settled in, they were seated on the porch swing, hands lightly entwined, basking in the fading light. The connection they had nurtured over days of slow, attentive interaction had blossomed into something real, mutual, and deeply satisfying. The widow's warmth, vulnerability, and grace had intertwined seamlessly with his sincerity, observation, and care. There was no rush, no tension, just a quiet, fulfilling intimacy, a promise of shared moments yet to come.